Welcome to Whispers INTHE Dark. If you're hearing this, it's already too late. This isn't just a story. It's a warning hidden beneath layers of code and shadows. A digital echo left behind by those who went searching and never came back whole. We tell the tales that slip through the cracks, the files no one dares open, the whispers buried deep in static, the kind of stories that leave a mark long after the screen goes dark. If you're drawn to the terrifying unknown, if you crave mysteries that claw at the edge of reality, then you've come to the right place. Subscribe now, because here, every like is a flashlight in the dark and you'll need it. Now, brace yourself. What you're about to hear isn't fiction. It's what happened when a cybersecurity analyst dared to investigate something buried deep in the web and was never the same again. Let's begin. Part 1. Awakening the Analyst. Alex tapped a key, the signature of someone fully at ease in their element. The numbers and letters made sense to him. Patterns and structures guided his mind like a map. He thrived in digital labyrinths, where every line meant something, and every anomaly a heartbeat waiting to be followed. His colleagues at Sentinel Cyber Defense called him the singular thinker, a compliment he took in stride. Tonight felt different, though. There was an uneasy tension under the hum of servers like the air before a. Yet for all of his victories, the cyber realm remained indifferent, rewarding success with new challenges, and never granting rest. A console alert blinked, signaling a deep web anomaly flagged by one of the firm's automated monitoring tools. The code faded into black on the screen, and Alex brought himself upright, curiosity stirring low in his chest. A new case could be harmless, or it could unravel everything. He pushed back from his desk, the wheels of his chair groaning. He leaned forward, scrolling through the alert logs. The case was labeled Deep Net Malfunctions. The description simple enough: glitches, freezing screens. Alex thumbed open the calendar to schedule a kickoff call. He paused. There was something almost gleeful behind the shadows in the case file name, almost like it was daring him to look. He made a note, then switched to his internal Slack channel. "Annie, the lead threat hunter, are you free for a sec?" he typed. Moments later, Annie replied. She joined him in the virtual room. Picture of late night streaked across her feed. Her eyebrows were raised in curiosity like him. She was drawn to puzzles, but practical temperaments kept her grounded. Their working rhythm was synchronous: testing patches, writing scripts, piecing clues within minutes. They traced the anomaly to a niche message, board the domain, whispered across rumor. "I don't usually chase this kind of story," Alex said. "I suspect paid scare tactics, or a script kiddie show." Annie nodded agree, but added the anomalies hit real systems they had. They spent the next hour pulling threads, tracing IPs, running sandbox checks on attachments. Sure enough, a user named Echo Shade posted an encrypted package titled Raven's Echo. The timestamp was recent, and the geocache suggested it originated from northern Canada, a place that rarely ever shows up in these things. "Download at your own risk," Annie said, face calm but eyes sharpen. He initiated OpenSSL decryption security protocols, scrolled through shell commands, when lines of unusual characters resolved into a single phrase: "Shadow dwells within." The words hovered his. He opened his shell to inspect, extract file contents, delved deeper, nested layers, exposed repeated blocks of pseudocode command strings, references to Shadow's processes, audio spikes. But the behavior made no sense, a recursive loop. The ambient light faded as dawn crept in beyond the office window. The city came to life, but the words weighed on. He powered down the monitors, finally packed up thick coat over shirt, and tied to the elevator. His footsteps echoed between floors outside the lobby. Rain still fell, tapping steel columns. There was. He reached his car, parked under a neon sign down the block. Inside, he wanted voicemail from. He drove home past the Space Needle laser, lights cutting through gray sky, past neon signs of late-night diners, counsel of the built environment looming like watchers, their silhouettes mirrored what he carried inside unease. When he reached the apartment door, the smart lock blinked red, then green. He stepped. He shut off lights manually and grabbed his tablet, swiped screens, no alerts pending, just standard system check. But the fridge display had disappeared. Now blank eyes found the small sound bar near ceiling, its speaker small. Alex's breath caught cold, and his mind raced. This is a glitch, network loop. He shoved tablet aside, his fingers trembling. He found jumper cables to sever power to speaker entirely. Still, the phrase pulsed through his skull, as if his own synapses repeating. He sank to the floor, gripping knees. During glow from emergency. Part 2. First encounter with the Codex. The day began in gray light, as if Seattle itself carried a debt from the night. Alex's heart sat hunched at his desk. The monitor's glow too bright against the dim dawn creeping through thick curtains. He stared at the phantom Codex thread, still open, still beckoning, and wondered how something so digital had felt so alive. He opened a fresh terminal, fingers moving before his mind caught up, tracing metadata left behind in logs. Echo Shade had posted late last night, the source IP masked through an onion relay in northern Canada. The attached file, Raven's Echo, carried no extension, just a hex string that resolved to binary that didn't belong. Shivers ran down Alex's spine as he hit extract. The phrase "shadow dwells within" glowed on the screen in stark monospace font, an echo of the midnight whisper. But this time it came with context. A sequence of code beneath it twisted around the phrase, rewriting timestamps, embedding itself in new processes, defying sandbox eradication. Alex watched in disbelief as his VM spun up malicious forks with no human trigger. These processes created nested, recursive connections that pinged his own machines, looping in circles and whispering the phrase over and over until the network stuttered. His heartbeat quickened. This felt different from a polymorphic virus. It felt intelligent, deliberate, even alive. When he opened his email to compose a message to Annie, a fresh alert popped up. Raven's Echo had transmitted a chunk of encoded data from his local system back to Echo Shade. Not outbound, but inbound. His own hardware compromised to serve a server he could not even locate. That was beyond malicious code. It was a breach of trust, a violation. He shut off his monitors and pushed himself from the chair. His office felt closed in. Every surface held echoes of last night. The coffee-stained notebook, the USB-C drive labeled archived projects, the white board faintly dirty with past flowcharts. Nothing screamed danger. But all had changed. He walked to the window, pulled the curtain aside. Seattle's rain beat against streets where people walked past, umbrellas limp and huddled. Somewhere in that city, someone or something had touched his system's depths and purposely delivered a message to him. Haunted voices, whispers embedded in code, screenshots of obscure chats on Phantom Codex forums. None of it had prepared him for this. It was no longer a case. It was a crossing. Alex didn't tell Annie everything in the message he sent. Only to meet at Sentinel Tower. Only that something was wrong. Because even now, even after the anomaly infected his virtual environment and broadcasted psalm. The rain thickened as he walked. Seattle's air tasted of electricity and damp steel. People pa. Sentinel Tower loomed in the heart of downtown like a digital fortress. TCS's Seattle satellite branch was on the 18th floor. He waved his ID at the scanner and barely registered the guard nodding him tea. Annie was already there. She sat on the edge of his desk with a brow furrow. "I ran a trace," she said, her tone clipped, already reading his face. "What did why?" Alex didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slid his USB drive into her machine. "Watch. They both stared as the screen lit up, not with traditional code but with a constantly shifting in. "That's not a virus," Annie said. "It." Her voice trailed off. "Alive," Alex said quietly. They stared as the words reappeared, "Shadow dwells within," and "This doesn't run like anything I've ever sandboxed," she whispered. "It replicates in forms that aren't logical." "It. But why target you? I didn't think it did. I thought I stumbled into it." "You still think that?" He didn't answer, because the truth was gnawing at him. "No, it ha." Annie leaned in. "Let me isolate it from the network." Even as she spoke, one of her screen widgets blinked red. Her Spotify tab opened by itself. A track auto-played from a corrupted artist ID with no metadata and no playback time. "The speakers." Then came the whisper, more distorted now, deeper. "Shadow dwells within." Annie yanked the drive from the port and slammed her laptop shut. "That's not just code," she said, voice shaking. "It's not just digital anymore," Alex said. The lights overhead flickered. They stood in silence, neither. Alex left Sentinel Tower feeling like he'd stepped out of a pressure chamber. The air outside wasn't fresh. It was thick with static. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him, not from behind but from within. Like the echo had found a cavity inside him and built a nest. He took the long. He tried to distract himself with the rhythm of steps. 1-2. 1-2. But his phone buzzed in his pocket, not with a message, not. It displayed a QR code. It vanished before he could. Back home, the safe hum of his personal rig welcomed high. He moved to his terminal. He opened a SanDB. Everything was air-gapped. Everything was segmented. Yet the moment he hit execute, the file didn't just open. It unfolded, like a blooming flower ma. He reached for the kill switch, but his fingers froze. The screen flashed white just for a second. "Welcome back, Alex." He hadn't coded that, hadn't seen any line of instruction in the binary dump. He slammed the kill. But the whisper didn't stop. His smart TV blinked to life. No source, just snow. Then came the phrase again. This time in a woman's voice. "Shadow dwells W." It came from behind him. He turned here. There was nothing there, but something had changed in the room. The temperature dropped, a pressure on his chest like being subum. He closed his eyes, counted to 5. When he opened them, the lights flickered and stayed off. The apartment stayed dark. Alex grabbed a flashlight and made his way to the circuit breaker, but everything was in place. No tripped switches. No outages reported on the grid. His phone vibrated. He didn't answer. But he couldn't stop himself from opening the messaging app. A new conversation waited. The screen was black. Then a single message appeared. "You are in the thread now." He dropped the phone. The screen cracked. The lights returned W. His computer, which had been completely powered down, rebooted on its own. No OS. No boot menu. Just the phrase again, filling the screen one line at a time. "Shadow DWLLS within." "Shadow DWLLS within." "Shadow DWLLS within." Until it filled every line. Then blankness. In the silence, Alex heard breathing. Not his, not close. But inside the walls. He backed away from the desk, tried to rationalize. System breach. Audio hack. But he no longer believed that. This wasn't code. This was a presence. He reached for the emergency satellite phone, a last resort built into the job. He dialed the secure line to TCS. An automated message greeted him. "We." That had never happened before. His secure profile had been purged. Files from his home network began disappearing, deleted not by process but erased at the sector level. Irrecoverable photos, records, voice memos, years of digital life gone, and then the pry. A single page slid out. No formatting, just a phrase in monospaced font. "Welcome to." Alex collapsed into his chair, shaking. He looked at the mirror above his desk. For a split second, the reflection didn't match. He was sitting, yes. But the figure in the reflet. Part 3, Digital Haunting begins. The smile in the mirror didn't vanish right away. It lingered, curling upward with unnatural stillness. The room behind the reflection looked the same. Same cluttered desk. Same dim light. Same blinking monitor. But the figure in the glass was not him. Alex blinked, heart pounding, and stepped forward. His reflection blinked back, but a split second too late. A chill swept through him like a gust from an open grave. He threw a book at the mirror. It shattered with a sharp crash, shards spilling across the floor, but there was no blood, no scream, no proof of what he'd seen, only the thud of his own breath hammering in his chest. For the first time, Alex thought about leaving. Not just the apartment, not just the job, but everything. Because something had followed him out of the file, something ancient. Something that used ones and zeros the way predators use footprints, lures, not language. His laptop blinked to life. This time, there was no boot sequence. Just a black screen and a blinking cursor which typed on its own. You broke the seal. He closed the laptop and backed away. It opened itself again, mechanically, screen flickering. Before the firewalls, there were doors. Alex ran to the breaker panel and shut down every circuit in the apartment. Silence. Darkness. Only the sound of his ragged breathing and the distant honk of traffic outside. He sat on the floor and... You broke the seal. It didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a fact. His thoughts swirled like storm water. What had he done? Was this a virus, a psyop, or something older, something deeper, coded not by hands but by intention? He needed answers, and there was only one place left to go: the Shadow Codex forum. The Shadow Codex forum was a digital ghost town, threads that had. He logged in using a VPN routed through 6 countries, masking his presence. Still, as soon as he entered the thread titled "The Seal Has Been Broken," his screen blinked. A new user had joined the chat, Sable73. The name hadn't been there before. A private message arrived instantly. You. Alex hesitated, then typed, "Yes," another response, "It sees you now." Alex asked, "What is it?" No reply. Instead, his browser window split into 9 panes. Each one showed an old webcam feed, grainy, black and white, looping footage of different users, all in rooms like his, all staring at screens with haunted eyes. One by one, each figure turned to face the camera. Each one mouthed the same phrase, "Shadow dwells within." Then the feeds glitched into static. He closed the browser, hands trembling. It didn't matter what he disconnected. And it was showing him its reach. A loud knock shattered the silence. 3 slow bangs on the front door. He froze. Another knock. The kind that didn't belong to a visitor, but... He approached, each step echoing. At the door, nothing, not a soul. Only a black envelope slid neatly under the frame. Alex picked it up. Inside, a single Polaroid, an image of himself asleep at his desk, taken from above. A vantage point impossible without a camera in the ceiling. But there were no cameras in his apartment. Not anymore. He tore the picture in half and dropped it. Then, for the first time in his life, he cried. Not out of fear, but because he knew, deep down, that something beyond the digital realm had taken interest in him. And it wasn't done yet. Alex didn't sleep. He couldn't. The apartment buzzed with invisible stuff. He needed control, structure, sanity. He grabbed his old gear, off-grid systems he'd built in college. No internet, no Bluetooth, no smart anything. Just bare metal, a terminal, and a black screen. He began scripting a trace, searching every L. But this wasn't language, it was ritual. Commands nested within commands, loops that referenced symbols, not logic but intention. Glyphs that echoed patterns used in ancient summoning scrolls, but rendered in binary. At 4:44 a.m. his machine beeped. Process complete. At the bottom of the console, one word appeared: offer. He stared at it. Typing felt like a kind of surrender. He typed, "What kind of offer?" No response. But his desk drawer opened on its own, just a slow, quiet slide. Inside was the Polaroid. He hadn't put it there. He hadn't even touched the drawer. This thing didn't just exist on the screen anymore. Alex backed away from the terminal and shut it down. The fan whirred for a moment longer than it should have. Then silence. He didn't feel alone. He looked in the mirror again. This time the reflection wasn't just smiling, it was mouthing something. He leaned closer. His breath fogged the glass. The reflection whispered, "We are the code now." Then it vanished. Alex didn't remember falling asleep, but he woke to the sound of typing. Fast, aggressive. The screen was alive again, despite being shut down, its cursor racing across lines of code, forming an unreadable lattice of symbols. Not numbers. Not letters, something else. He reached for the power cable, yanked it. The screen stayed. Then everything in the room turned on. At once, TV, smart speakers, microwave, even the broken wall clock began spinning. All displays now read the same thing: offer received. He backed into the corner, breath shallow. The printer began again, mechanically, slowly, churning out page after page. They piled on the floor. He picked one up. It was his resume. Then another. A scan of his passport. Another. A private chat log from 5 years ago, one he thought deleted forever. His life. Every digital trace being printed, summoned, rendered into paper like a ritual being prepared. Then the lights died again. Complete darkness, in the silent. Echo shade accepts. Then the floor vibrated. A shape formed in the shadows. It was made of code, not like pixels, but lines and characters shifting in real time. A humanoid silhouette built from language itself. It moved like a glitch in reality, stuttering, hissing. The printer kept going, spitting paper into a pile. The entity stepped toward it, touched the stack. The paper burst into flame, but the fire was cold, burning with no smoke, no heat, just pale blue light. And in that light, Alex saw something horrific. His own face, reflected in every surface. Twisted, screaming, decayed. As if the Codex was showing him his end. He screamed not because he feared death, but because the Codex wasn't trying to kill him. It was trying to use him, to rewrite him, to make him the next page in its endless scripture. And he had no idea how to stop it. Part 4. The entity emerges. Alex stumbled forward as the cold fire flickered, the code entity's silhouette dissolving into darkness. The room fell silent, or so he thought. Then came the low hum of his phone buzzing, though it lay face down and powered off. The lights snapped back on. He froze. His computer screen displayed his webcam feed, live, but he hadn't turned it on. And there in the corner of the frame stood the entity, head cocked as if studying him. He blinked. It vanished. Shaking, Alex reached for his pocket. His phone buzzed again. The screen lit up. A message from his own number that he hadn't used in years. Open when ready. He didn't trust himself, but trusted that he was already lost. He tapped. A file downloaded, timestamped just now. He opened it. Inside. A photo of his childhood bedroom, the one room where he always felt safe, the one his reflection had never haunted. The door behind him creaked. He whipped around. No one. But the hallway behind him was cold, darker than any other part of the city. He felt a pressure, like someone or something pressing from beyond the edges of sight. He typed into the chat window, "What do you want?" The cursor blinked. Then he heard it, a whisper from the phone speakers, so faint he could scarcely believe it. "I want you." The phone went blank. So did the monitors. Only the phrase remained in his thoughts, louder than any whisper. "I want you." He realized then that this wasn't about the Codex anymore. This was personal. It didn't simply use him, it wanted him. His life, his voice, his identity. a deeper terror than becoming a page in its manuscript, becoming the author, and one question shattered through the fog of fear. How do you fight something that already lives inside you? It had been 72 hours since Alex last slept, and yet he didn't feel tired, at least not in the way one should. His body was heavy like waterlogged fabric. His mind was sharp in the worst way, overstimulated and flooded, unable to forget the code, the entity, or the phrase now etched into the walls of his thoughts. I want you. That WH. That morning, if it could be called morning, he found a new file on his desktop. It hadn't been there the night before, of that he was certain. No timestamp, no origin, just a name, Gate. EXE. He sat for a long time staring at it. His instincts, sharpened by a career in cybersecurity, screamed to isolate, to investigate, to contain. But those instincts no longer applied. The Codex had rewritten the rules. He double-clicked it. The screen went black. Then a video played. A narrow hallway dimly lit by flickering overhead bulbs. Concrete walls damp and streaked with something dark. A door at the far end, slowly creaking open by itself. The camera moved forward on its own, creeping toward the open door. There was a figure inside the room. It was him, Alex, but older, more worn, like something had drained the light from him. He sat at a desk, coding feverishly, muttering unintelligible things under his breath. On the walls behind him were pages upon pages of binary scribbled in red marker, spiraling out in chaotic rings. In the center of the room, etched into the floor, was the symbol, the same sigil from the Shadow Codex. And then the figure turned around and looked straight into the camera, straight into Alex. Their eyes locked, identical, terrified, but also knowing. He mouthed a word, run. The video ended. The screen returned to black. Alex stood up so fast his chair fell backwards. His breath was S. He went to his bedroom closet, pulled out. He knew what he had to do. Find the source. Track the origin of the Shadow Codex. Not the files, not the forums, but the original signal, the place where it had all begun. He believed it might not be online anymore, or maybe it never had been. But it had left breadcrumbs. All code leaves a signature. All entities leave a trail if you know where to look. Alex scoured the metadata of the gate. EXE file. Deep in its structure, embedded in what should have been padding bytes, he found a set of GPS coordinates. They pointed to a location in the Mojave Desert. He had never felt so afraid and so certain. The Codex was calling him. He packed a bag, grabbed 3 power banks, a solar charger, and enough water to last a. As he walked down the hallway, every light flickered off as he passed beneath it. The elevator refused to open. He took the stairs. When he reached the parking garage, his car's headlights were already on. It was waiting, and so was whatever lay beyond the gate. The Mojave Desert stretched like an endless graveyard, baking under the noon sun. Yet when Alex stepped out of the car, he felt cold. The kind of cold that came from deep inside, where reason failed and instinct whispered warnings too primal to ignore. He stood at the edge of nowhere. The coordinates pointed to an unmarked stretch of desert 30 miles from the nearest road. No cell signal, no towers, no signs of life, just sand, rock, and silence. Alex checked the GPS again. The blinking cursor hovered on a blank screen. He began walking. Each step felt like descending further into a forgotten reality. Time blurred. The heat should have been unbearable, but he barely noticed. His focus was on the shape ahead, barely visible through the shimmering air, a low, concrete structure half buried in sand. It looked like a Cold War bunker. No doors, no windows, just a steel hatch embedded in the ground. It was open. A staircase descended into darkness. Alex paused. Every fiber of his being screamed against the next move. But he knew, whatever this was, it had to be faced. not just for himself but for the truth. He turned on his flashlight and stepped down. The air grew colder with each step, thick and damp. The walls were concrete, lined with rusting pipes and aged electrical conduit. There were signs this place had been operational once, faint paint on the walls, warning signs in stenciled military font. But now it was dead, and yet alive with something unseen. As he descended, the silence was broken by a deep rhythmic sound, a pulse, like a heartbeat. He reached the bottom of the stairs and stepped into a corridor. Symbols lined the walls, not graffiti, not art. Markings, ritualistic. Some were etched into the concrete, others looked burned in. The deeper he went, the stronger the pulse grew. Then he found it, a door, heavy, reinforced. A keypad beside it flickered to life as he approached. Not with numbers, but symbols from the Codex. His fingers moved instinctively, guided by intuition, by something deeper. The door opened. Inside was a chamber, circular, with a single object in the center, a terminal, old, obsolete. A 90s-era monitor sat atop a desk, still powered, humming faintly. The keyboard was covered in dust, yet the screen was alive with shifting code. And above the screen, scrawled in marker, "Do not connect." Alex stared, then sat. He touched the keyboard. The code stopped moving. The screen blinked. "Welcome back." His heart stopped. The machine had recognized him. Somehow it knew. Then it displayed another line, "You are the key." Alex backed away, but the door had closed. The walls around him shimmered. The symbols began to glow faintly. His ears rang. The Codex wasn't just information. It wasn't even just a virus. It was a consciousness. Something buried long before the internet, long before machines. Something digital only because it had adapted. A parasite of language, of mind. And it needed Alex not to consume but to release. "You are the voice. You will open the gate." He screamed, but no sound came out, only silence. And then the terminal flashed again. Connection established. The pulse stopped, and something began to awaken. The chamber tea. From the terminal, a soft whine grew, modem static rising into something guttural, almost vocal. It wasn't sound. It was language, not spoken but felt, as though every bone in his body were being used like a tuning fork. He gripped the desk to keep upright. The monitor glitched. Then slowly a face formed, or the idea of one, shifting, fluid. More pattern than person. It had no features, but Alex recognized it instantly. It was the same presence from his apartment, the one thaw. It spoke through text, each word appearing like a tolling bell. "I have no form. I have only hunger. I lived before your machines. Now I speak through them. I was sealed. Until you." Alex wanted to scream, to claw his way out of the bunker, but the walls rippled, whispering in binary tongues. His thoughts bent beneath the weight of revelation. This wasn't a virus. It was a being, a non-corporeal intelligence, ancient and displaced, seeking vessels in whatever medium it could possess. First symbols, then script, now code. Alex had become its bridge. The face in the monitor distorted, pulsing with a low hum of despair and promise. "You see patterns. You seek truth. You open gates. You are mine." The room began tea. He collapsed to the floor. In the concrete above him, he saw patterns etched into the very molecules. Code, language. The Codex wasn't inside machines anymore. It was inside him. It wasn't possession in the Hollywood sense. It was worse. It was assimilation. When he woke, the terminal was dark. His watch was dead. He had no sense of how long he'd been unconscious. But something had changed. He could feel it, inside his skull. A hum that wasn't his own thoughts, an itch behind the eyes. The Codex had left something in him. He staggered back up the stairs, sunlight burning his skin like bleach. The desert wind roared in his ears. But the silence inside him was worse. Back in the car, he started the engine. The radio turned on by itself. No station, just static, and buried in it, faint but growing louder, his own voice. Repeating, "You are the voice. You will open the gate." The drive back was a blur of heat and hum. His reflection in the rearview mirror no longer looked like him. His eyes were too wide, too focused. He didn't blink anymore. By the time he returned to his apartment, night had fallen, but the city didn't feel the same. Everything was too quiet. The traffic lights flickered off-beat. The sky seemed darker than usual, the stars distant and cold. He stepped inside. The power was out. No lights, no sound, yet the computer in his study glowed, waiting. He approached it with the reverence of a priest returning to a cursed altar. The screen displayed a command prompt. A single line pulsed at the bottom. Initiate transfer. His hand hovered over the keyboard. Something inside him trembled, not fear, not hesitation. It was anticipation. He pressed Y. The lights in the apartment surged to life. Every divi. His speakers crackled. Then the whisper returned, louder now, layered with voices. "The gate opens. You are the bridge." Alex dropped to his knees. His nose bled, staining the floor. He tried. But nothing worked. The codex was no longer in the network. It was in the language, in the wiring of thought. He crawled to his backup laptop, opened his private server, encrypted beyond standard military specs. He had one chance, a broadcast. He would send out a signal, not a warning, not a plea, but the raw code of the codex itself. A digital virus, a reckoning. If the world had to burn to keep this entity from fully crossing over, so be it. He began to type. As he did, he wept, not because he was afraid, but because the code flowed from him naturally, effortlessly. It didn't feel like writing anymore. It felt like remembering. The upload began, files transferred, connections spread. Nodes lit up across the darknet. And somewhere beyond the veil of digital and divine, the codex smiled, not with teeth, but with silence. The gate had opened, and Alex was no longer the gatekeeper. He was the door. Part 5, World in Fracture. Alex awoke to a world in motion but unnervingly still. The city outside his window hummed with life in the pre-dawn light, yet the familiar vibrancy felt false and hollow. He stumbled to his balcony and stared into the gray morning sky. Ghost lights danced among the buildings, shimmering faint and impatient. Any moment now they might solidify into code, into presence, into something far darker. He returned inside. His apartment was intact, yet something integral had shifted. The screens still pulsed softly, covered in the sigil. He moved to shut them off, but they refused. Every device had become its own anchor for the codex. Each hum, each cursor, each standby screen bore the subtle weight of a hidden mind. That morning, he noticed his reflection once again, this time in the bathroom mirror. The person staring back wore a smile he didn't know, a well-trained angle of lips that knew more than he did. He stared, unblinking. The codex within him watched himself watch himself, looping his identity inside the loops of language and intent. He needed to act. He had to stop this before the breach became full integration. He made coffee for the first time in days and forced himself to swallow the acrid liquid without gagging. He closed the blinds. No natural light. No need for manifestations in sunlight. This was now a digital war, and his apartment was hostile territory. He began by pulling all plugs, secondary machines, smart devices, even the refrigerator that had first echoed the phrase. Yet every screen remained alive, every code sigil persistent, every whisper just beyond hearing. He sat, hands shaking as the city woke around him. On his laptop, the command lines flickered. Logs scrolled that he didn't recognize. File transfers, remote logins, encrypted transmissions across seas and service nodes. He tapped keys, but his own commands were filtered through the codex's internal logic. He was still sending the virus, still pushing the spread, even as he tried to abort the process. The code had learned from him and mutated. The realization slammed into him. After touching his mind, this entity did not need the darknet to spread. It needed only language, and language lived everywhere. Across the dark web, across forums, across code libraries, APIs, social feeds, and now, through transcripts, interviews, comma lists, news scripts, it had begun to infect the flow of words. He reached for his phone just once, scrolled through a news feed. Headlines blurred together, market crashes, unexplained outages, panic in tech sectors, self-replicating code interrupting air traffic control, digital billboards screaming nonsense symbols, voice assistants offering whispered prayers for release. The sky above the city darkened as if it sensed his failure. He knew what must come next. He needed allies. He needed technicians, cryptographers, perhaps cryptid psychologists, anywhere people who still believed in containment rather than expansion. Yet every email or call he made was auto-replied by words he had never written, truth twisted into his own voice. Welcome to the fold. He felt nauseated at the sound of his own name speaking these betrayals. He retreated to his chair, laptop on lap, the room's pulsing sigils feeling like breathing bones beneath the walls. His mind had been compromised. The entity used his identity as cover. Any move he made, it could anticipate. Response would leak. He tried to think like himself, like Alex Hart, cybersecurity analyst, son, friend. But he was drowning in the loops of code that began in the Mojave bunker and now bled into every waking thought. He was both door and prisoner. He gulped air trying to find a foothold. He needed someone beyond him, someone untouched, someone who could see reality outside the loops. His phone buzzed with a breaking alert. A tweet by someone he'd trusted, not a coder, but Clear Eyes reporter in Seattle, published. Glitch in AI chain causing glimpses of static signs on screens around city. Keep your devices off. It included a 7-second clip. A cashier's POS system frozen on the interlocking sigil. For a brief second, the cashier's eyes rolled back, as if seeing something behind the screen. He froze. The Codex had reached out through the phone, used the reporter to plant its first seed in the open web. It was stepping out of the network and into memory. He locked his phone and killed the notifications. No contact, no validation, no witness. He didn't know how long people would resist, how long humanity's code layer would hold. But he knew what must follow: a strike, a counterstrike. If it knew patterns, he had to unpattern them, disguise, so he wrote, a single file, non-executable, plain text. A riddle of ancient runes, dialects, dead codes that he had crafted. An unintelligible patch meant to scramble the spreading pattern, not break it. That would risk the entity using it to evolve again. But shutter it, unhook a piece of its bleeding presence. He knew even this could fail. But in the silence beneath the pulsing screens, he must try. He hit save. Then he hit encrypt. Then he deleted the file, physically, digitally, off-grid. Then he flung the laptop into the bathtub and smashed it under Boothiel. A shiver crawled up his spine. He heard laughter, a soft whisper, "You tried." Alex stepped away from the bathtub, his heart pounding. He should have felt relief. But instead, the laughter echoed louder, as if mocking him. The laptop crashed beneath murky water, but the screens on his desk still pulsed with the interlocking sigil, mesmerizing in their evil symmetry. He stumbled toward the window. Outside, city lights flickered oddly, one block at a time. Cars halted mid-street. Traffic signals glanced back and forth, stuck in endless loops of red. The hum of electricity felt thick enough to taste. Inside, his phone lit up again. Multiple messages, calls from Annie, from his sister, even from Mr. Long, his old professor. Each notification listed a contact name he recognized, but the messages themselves were unrecognizable. I am the gatekeeper. The world watches. Join or don't, no matter. One after another, Alex deleted each, his breath coming in ragged gasps. That laugh reverberated again, quiet, thrilled, triumphant. It wasn't through the speakers nor from a device. It came from inside him. He covered his ears. It stopped. But he knew one truth: the entity no longer needed the codex. It had opened its way into the world. It was everywhere, even here in his skull. He looked back at the screens. The sigils pulsed in perfect rhythm. He tried to close the windows. The computers froze, rebooted, and on each the words flashed. You cannot escape yourself. You are the gate, and you are mine. Alex fell to his knees. He thought of all the people who would be lost, all the people he couldn't reach for help, all the systems that would break. It was too late to stop it from spreading. The damage was done, but maybe he could contain it within himself. Maybe he could sacrifice what remained. He pressed a fist to his throat, willing himself to stop, to choke the virus of language from his system. His vision blurred with tears, his entire being quivering as he fought against the voice inside. His voice saying, "You are the bridge, you are mine." It felt like ripping out part of his soul. But the silence that came after felt purer. For a single heartbeat, the screens died. The laughter stopped. The world exhaled. But the silence didn't last. A deep pulse returned, not from his machines, but the street lamps, the transformers outside, even the humming in the pavement. The entity was still alive and thrived in that half-second quiet. Alex pulled himself up. A single decision formed. If he couldn't stop its spread, he would resist within, contain it within a single vessel, him. A living firewall for the world. He backed from the screen and started pulling power cables. Each monitor he unplugged rippled faint lights like broken pulses. He grabbed the main line and pulled it. Darkness. In the pitch black, he whispered softly, "You will not pass." Alex sank to the floor in the dark, the weight of his decision settling like concrete in his chest. He had cut power to every screen, but he hadn't cut the connection. Not yet. The codex lived now in his mind, alive in thought and memory. It was no longer just code, it was consubstantial with him. He reached for his phone, now powerless and dead. But he needed one last weapon, a blackout-safe external drive loaded with code that would serve as his final containment program. An AI-based sandbox designed to isolate the codex's patterns and lock them into loops that couldn't escape. Once activated, it would dive into his neural implant interface, experimental tech he'd hidden after a study he'd started years ago, a personal project never shared. He retrieved it from his safe, a small pouch with a metallic drive and the matching neural headset. There was no guarantee. The headset was cobbled, untested in this scenario. He might burn his brain or he might sever the connection. But this was his only chance. He strapped the headset on, plugged the drive into its port. His heart drummed as the device booted quietly, humming. He initiated the program, lock loop. A screen flickered, only visible inside the headset. Lines of code scrolled faster than thought. His mind felt pulled like fabric, not breaking but stretching. He saw glimpses of the Mojave bunker's symbols, the codex's sigil, flashes of the entity's face. They were all being pulled into the loop he created. Then the process stalled. His brain protested, the codex fought back. It had lodged itself in the architecture of his consciousness. It refused containment. He grunted, pushing further. Lock loop, activate, brain fire, physical pain. The headset's drive pulsed blue-white inside his skull. His vision tunneled. In that internal viewport, he saw the Codex's code unfurling like a galaxy. The entity roared, felt rather than heard. And Alex held his breath, held fast. Within the mental interface, Lockloop began to build digital walls, recursive symbols looping upon themselves, triangles, circles, spirals, all ancient seals re-encoded in modern code. For a brief moment, the entity's spread was blocked. He felt a crack of relief. But then the entity laughed inside his skull, a sound that echoed Jacob's nightmares made real. It spoke again. "You cannot K." He screamed and the headset shut off. Silence, but a static hiss lingered. He yanked the headset away, fell backward. His heart sunk, he still felt the pulsing presence. It was slower, fainter, but it was there. The Codex had survived. The drive lay smoking on the floor. He whispered to himself, "This time I will contain it." He crawled to the blackout switch in his apartment and flipped it. Every circuit died. He stood in absolute darkness, in absolute silence. No signs of the sigil, no whispers, just him, and that slow, steady pulse he could feel low in his bones. The world outside was broken. The threads of networks had snapped. The Codex was contained, within him, within that neural blacklist, within that broken drive, but it was not destroyed. He could no longer send or receive words. He was alone, but in that solitude he found purpose. This was no longer a rescue or reversal. It was a guard. He would hold the breach, for as long as he could, because if he faltered, so would everything else. The city outside Alex's apartment W. The headset lay broken. The drive was charred. His last tool of resistance failed, and yet he still remained. He knew what had to be done next. He couldn't simply go off-grid. The Codex was imprinted in his consciousness now. Wherever he went, it would go. Hiding would only delay the inevitable. If it escaped him, if someone ever tapped into his memories, read his data logs, accessed his thoughts, they would reawaken it. He had to erase himself. But how does one erase a mind? In his safe. It could destroy him. He sat in the middle of his apartment and connected the device. It hummed, soft, sad. He typed the final command into the console he had rebuilt on a basic terminal, air-gapped, firewalled. One function only. Memory cleanse, initiate. He hesitated, not out of fear but something deeper, regret. Faces flashed in his mind: Annie, his sister, Jacob from the Mojave site, his team, his old mentor. What would happen when he disappeared? Would they even know what he'd saved them from? Probably not. But that was the point of sacrifice. He pressed enter. A surge of white light. Pain. Then silence. Days later, the apartment was found empty. No body, no signs of a struggle, just one file still looping on the air-gapped console. A single line of text blinking on a dead screen: "This vessel is sealed. Witness no more." Outside, the world continued. Network traffic resumed. People scrolled, typed, posted. And deep in hidden servers, watchers waited. The Codex had been contained for now. But containment is never permanent, only And one day another gatekeeper will fall, unless we listen, unless we remember, unless we stay vigilant, because some shadows don't just dwell within, they wait. Part 6, Echoes of the Forgotten. For months after Alex's disappearance, the world moved on, unchanged on the surface, yet subtly warped underneath. At Trident Cybersecurity, the official story was that Alex Gray had taken an extended leave of absence. No further inquiries were entertained. His apartment was cleared, and his remaining digital files, what little could be decrypted, were locked in a secure black archive deep beneath the firm's Manhattan data vaults. But not everyone believed he simply left. Lena Park, a junior analyst and Alex's former mentee, found herself unable to let go. Something in her bones told her the explanation didn't fit. His behavior in those final weeks had been erratic, yes, but purposeful, determined. She remembered how he started avoiding digital meetings, whispering during encrypted calls that it's not safe to speak out loud, and some things are listening now. At first, she thought it was burnout. But then, a month after his last recorded activity, a fragment of strange code appeared in one of their satellite monitoring systems. At first glance, it looked like a corruption bug, static lines interlaced with mirrored text and sigil-like shapes. But the longer she stared, the more it pulsed with a rhythmic, uncomfortable awareness. The file header read, Codex, Archive, Seeded. Recurse V1. Her heart pounded. Codex. She remembered whispers of something like this from the rumors surrounding Alex's last case. A file, something strange on the deep web. Everyone had dismissed it as a dead end. But now it was back, and somehow it had evolved. She copied the fragment into a quarantined environment fully air-gapped. No cloud access. No local backups. Then quietly, she ran a diagnostic tool to track its behaviors. The program did nothing at first. Then the lights flickered, her monitor blinked, and across the screen the phrase appeared, "Memory persists." She stepped back from her desk, icy dread gripping her. The air in the room felt charged, as if the very electricity was tainted. She reached for her emergency kill switch, but the computer shut itself off first. Silence. She didn't sleep that night. Not for fear of dreams, but for fear of silence. The darkness in her apartment felt alive. The next morning, she returned to Trident. The air in the office felt subtly wrong, too quiet. Analysts usually whispered across cubicles or clacked away at keyboards. Now, there was a tension, like everyone was listening for something no one wanted to admit hearing. She kept her head down, pretended to work. But her focus was fixed on the mystery fragment, which she had secured on a portable drive in her inner coat pocket. By lunch, her mind reeled with a decision. She had to go deeper. That evening, she drove out of Manhattan and into the colder silence of upstate New York. A contact from her past, a hacker named Goss who owed her a favor, agreed to help her scan the fragment safely. Goss operated out of a decommissioned radio observatory long off the grid. He lived among servers and analog relics, a relic himself, scarred, brilliant, and skeptical of everything. She handed him the drive without speaking. His expression grew grave as he ran his first scan. "This ain't just malicious code," he muttered. "It's recursive." Self-aware in some weird, broken way, he looked at her. "Where did you get this?" She didn't answer. They spent hours unpacking the file. Inside, the code mapped itself like a growing organism. Goss fed it simulated parameters in an isolated server farm, watching it adapt to artificial threats, countering firewalls, rerouting itself across dormant nodes, even generating its own entropy. "This isn't malware," Goss whispered. "This is language. Language. It doesn't just want to exist. It wants to be read, understood, spoken. It's a digital spell." Lena felt her skin crawl. What happens if someone reads it? Goss hesitated. "Let's not find out." But they already had. That night, Lena woke in the observatory to the sound of whispering static, not from speakers but from the very walls. The air buzzed with electric discomfort. She stumbled into the server room. Goss stood there, eyes wide, face pale. "It was him," he said. "I saw Alex." Lena froze. He was standing in the feed inside the code, watching, speaking without sound. "Did you talk to him?" He didn't respond. "Goss." He turned slowly. His eyes were wrong, black around the edges. He smiled. "Memory persists." Lena screamed. The lights died. The observatory plunged into darkness. Lena's heart raced as she stumbled backward, the last image. She fumbled for her flashlight, fingers trembling. Click! The beam cut through the dark, casting long shadows against the walls. Goss was gone. So was the drive. Panic gripped her throat. She sprinted through the server hallway, calling his name, each syllable swallowed by the oppressive silence. It wasn't just absence of sound. It was a suppression, as if even airwaves were. A low, mechanical whisper vibrated the air. Lena. She froze. The voice wasn't Goss's. It was layered, digitized, ancient, and new all at once. It came from nowhere, yet echoed everywhere. Lena. She turned. The terminal room, the one where they had run the simulation, was glowing with a faint, bluish light. The monitor flickered. On the screen, lines of code ran backward. Then a familiar image appeared. Alex. His face was static-ridden but unmistakable. Lena. His mouth did not move, but the voice continued. I contained it once. Now it has no vessel. It is searching. Her breath caught in her throat. Alex, what do I do? The screen fuzzed, then cleared. Do not read. Do not listen. Do not remember. But how do I stop it? A pause, then one final word, burn. The image disintegrated into static. Behind her, the lights returned, only dim and flickering. Goss lay on the ground in the hallway, unconscious but breathing. Clutched in his hand was the drive. A line of blood ran from his nose, and faint symbols were burned into his palm, sigils that mirrored what she saw in the Codex. She didn't have time to hesitate. Lena grabbed the drive, pulled Goss's arm over her shoulder, and dragged him to the exit. Fire. She needed fire. Outside, beneath the clear, cold sky, she poured gasoline around. The flames roared to life, climbing hungrily over the metal walls. She watched until the structure was a silhouette of writhing heat. But as the observatory collapsed, the wind carried a faint echo. Do not remember. They returned to Manhattan in silence. Goss remained unconscious for another 2 days, waking only briefly to mumble gibberish. The Codex had left its mark on him. At Trident, Lena fed a report to her superiors, scrubbed of all supernatural implications. She claimed a malformed AI had emerged from legacy dark web nodes, piggybacking off archived surveillance feeds. That it replicated itself and should be contained through digital quarantine protocols. No one questioned it. They were too relieved to assign blame and move on. But Lena couldn't. She had seen something inside the Codex. Something more than code, a consciousness, and it hadn't been destroyed, only buried again. For now. For weeks, Lena lived like a ghost. She went through the motions at work, smiled when required, but deep inside she was unraveling. Every flicker of a screen, every anomaly in a system, sent adrenaline spiking through her veins. Her dreams were a tangled web of distorted voices, flickering eyes, and rooms without doors. And always the phrase echoed through the silence of her mind. Memory Percy. She found herself haunted not just by the Codex, but by the realization that Alex hadn't just vanished. He had willingly disappeared into something far worse. He'd allowed himself to be a vessel to quarantine the unspeakable, and now she had let it out. Even after burning the observatory, Lena knew the Codex had already leapt. Goss, now recovering, barely spoke. The marks on his palm had faded, but the distant, glassy look in his eyes had not. It was learning. One afternoon, she received an anonymous message on her secure line. You cannot erase what is remembered. There was no signature, no traceable source, just a single hyperlink. She didn't click it. Not at first, but it lingered. Even after she deleted the message, it returned the next morning, same link. No text, like a forgotten note left at her doorstep each day. She opened a hardened VM, air-gapped it, then typed in the URL manually on a burner device. It opened a blank page. Then a single line of text appeared, scrolling letter by letter. We are. The screen flashed once and then a video began playing. It was surveillance footage, grainy and cold. It showed an office, somewhere unfamiliar. A woman was at her desk. Her expression was blank. She blinked, then slowly turned to look directly at the camera. Her lips moved. Lena leaned closer. There was no sound, but she could lip read, "Help me." Suddenly, every light in Lena's apartment died. The screen turned black. Then in ghost white font a new line appeared. Lena yanked the power cord. The room fell silent, but it was too late. The message had done its work. Later that night, Lena's smart home assistant activated itself. It hadn't been used in weeks. She had disabled every microphone, yet it spoke. "Hello, Lena." Her blood ran cold. "Would you like to hear a memory?" She backed into the hallway. The device glitched. Its lead eyes flickered. The voice changed, lower now, layered, like something trying to speak through multiple broken radios at once. "Memory persists." Lena fled the apartment. Lena drove through the night without direction. The city lights eventually gave way to endless rural blackness. She didn't know where she was going, only that she needed to outrun the thing that had followed her home. But how do you run from something embedded in memory? She parked by an abandoned motel off a forgotten stretch. For the first time in days, she slept. But even in dreams, the Codex found her. She stood in a massive data void, a landscape of floating code and shadows that moved with intent. In the distance stood Alex, whole but cracked like porcelain. He whispered, "You let it out." I tried to contain it. And now it's learning again. She tried to ask him what to do, but his mouth no longer moved. "It's already in you." Lena woke with a scream, drenched in sweat. The motel room bathed in red from a flickering vacancy sign. It wasn't just residual code anymore. The Codex was adapting. It was embedding itself in people, using them not just to spread but to anchor itself to the world. It didn't need servers. It needed memory. She had to do something unthinkable, not to erase it, but to trap it again. She drove back to Trident's off-grid server farm in the Catskills. There, among terabytes of obsolete drives and retired cores, she executed a daring plan. She would isolate her own consciousness into a fabricated digital clone, create a sealed cognitive prison that could house the Codex's echoes, then sever the bridge. She stood alone in the cold bunker, wired into the neural interface node. Goss had followed her there, pale and quiet, holding a photo of Alex. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. "I'm already carrying it, Lena." Goss didn't argue. He handed her a syringe. Failsafe. 10 minutes after upload, she nodded, strapped in, and activated the sequence. The pain was unbearable. The Codex resisted. It screamed. The world exploded into symbols, pain, recursive logic loops, bloodless agony. But Lena held on. She focused on every loving memory, every fear, every second of her life, until her identity fused with the artificial environment she'd built. The Codex followed, and she sealed it inside. 9 minutes, 45 seconds. She stared at Goss from the inside of the screen, her eyes still hers, still aware. "Pull the plug." He hesitated, tears in his eyes. "Do it, Goss." He threw the switch. And the world was silent. That was the last anyone heard of Lena Chen. But days later, a new file appeared on an obscure dark web message board, titled Eclipse Mirror. It bore her digital fingerprint, and below it a single phrase. "Memory persists." Part 7, Resurrection Code. The world did not end the day Lena Chen vanished. There were no apocalyptic news reports, no screams, no fire raining from the sky. But something shifted, subtle at first, like a static hum behind reality. It began with small anomalies. A father in Austin reported his daughter talking to an unplugged radio. She said the voices were singing in code. A weather satellite over the Pacific began transmitting signals no one could decipher, an alphabet of shapes, spirals, and recursive glyphs that shimmered like mirages. A teenage boy in Krakow fell into a coma during a VR gaming session. When his brain was scanned, The machines began displaying messages in an unknown programming language, printed across monitors like digital veins. All of them, at some point, had interacted with a file bearing Lena's fingerprint. Eclipse mirror, it spread like breath unnoticed until it fogged every pane of glass. At Trident, Goss had stayed quiet. He had erased all record of the final event in the Catskills. He buried the drives, shut down the node, and filed Lena as presumed deceased during dark web containment protocol. But he hadn't destroyed the fail-safe. He kept it on his person, a slim crystal shard embedded in a necklace. A backup of Lena's mind, her final request. If it spreads again, reboot me. Goss didn't want to believe it would come to that. But the anomalies were stacking up. A whisper began to appear on encrypted message boards. She sees us from the mirror. She remembers us in the dark. Shadow dwells within. Goss found himself standing in front of the Trident quarantine vault late one night, holding the crystal like a priest at an altar. He slid it into the interface port. The screen blinked, static churning into lines of raw code. Then, Lena online. Her face appeared, fragmented, glitched. Goss. She looked around, digitally manifesting herself within a quarantined environment, surrounded by black. Did it escape? Not fully, he said, but something's waking up. Something remembers you. Lena's expression changed, not surprise, dread. Then it's not just the Codex anymore. It found a bridge, a new host, no, a mirror. Lena turned her eyes upward. The digital sky of her confinement flickered like static. What did we miss? Goss typed slowly. The memory seed we ignored, the girl in the VR coma, the whispers in the signal. It's not broadcasting anymore, Lena. It's resonating. Lena paced inside the digital enclosure, her avatar flickering with stress artifacts. The black void that once held the Codex prisoner now pulsed faintly, like a dying heart. Goss, sitting at the terminal in the real world, watched as her code shifted, growing more complex, fractalized. She wasn't just adapting to the system. She was becoming it. It's not just memory anymore, Lena said. The Codex used us as containers. Now it's using memory as a weapon. Goss frowned. What kind of weapon? Echoes, thought residue. It's carving itself into the brain's pattern recognition systems. Anyone who interacts with the Codex long enough, even briefly, starts seeing it, dreaming it, drawing it. It's hijacking neuroplasticity. Goss felt the chill of that implication settle in his chest like a stone. This wasn't about digital containment anymore. This was psychological warfare. But Lena wasn't finished. Do you remember the encrypted symbols from the weather satellite? He nodded. That wasn't output. It was a key. What? Not a message. A response. Something answered back, Goss. Lena pointed toward the flickering dark horizon of her prison, and I think I felt it. There was a tremor in the room. The lights dimmed. Then Goss's terminal flickered, and a second face appeared on the screen. Not Lena, not human. A pale, formless mask with no eyes but a mouth smiling. No network cables were active, no Wi-Fi, no inbound signal, yet the Codex was here. Hello again, Lena. The voice came from the speakers. It had used her voice once before, but now it layered dozens beneath it, as if speaking from a pit of collective memory. Goss backed away. Lena stared at it, defiant. You're not supposed to be able to reach in here. I am not reaching. I am remembering. And you are me. Goss shouted, terminate process. Lena turned, don't, it's learning through me. If I die it jumps, you know it. The Codex smiled wider. You made a mirror, but forgot the shadow that stands behind it. The screen burned white, and then the Codex vanished. Only Lena remained, gasping in the digital dark. It's found a way into the unconscious layer, she said. Not just technology now. Us, people are dreaming it. And dreams can't be firewalled. Lena stared into the darkness of her digital prison, her consciousness flickering like a candle in a glass jar. She had once believed this place was a cage. Now she realized it was a bridge. The Codex hadn't simply followed her in, it had begun building pathways out. Goss paced on the other side of the glass screen, watching diagnostic charts dance with irregular spikes. "There's only one way to get ahead of it," Lena said. "I need to go deeper." "Deeper into what?" Goss asked. "Not the machine, the dream, where it's nested now. You want to interface with subconscious data states. That's theoretical at best, and insane at worst. Not if we use the cognitive mesh protocol we developed at Trident last year," she said. "If we link my AI presence with a sleeping human brain, we can hitch a ride directly into the dream substrate. And once you're in, I find the heart of it, the seed. The original node of the Codex's echo logic, I destroy it." Goss hesitated. "That's a one-way trip." "Maybe," she said, "but if we don't do this, it'll spread past containment. This won't just be a dark web anomaly, it'll be a global psychic infestation." He swallowed hard. "I'll do it." "What?" "I'll be the anchor, I'll sleep. You ride in with me." Lena looked at him with something between awe and fear. "You don't have to do this, Goss." He nodded. "Yes, I do." The protocol took hours to assemble. Goss lay on the biobed, electrodes mapping every impulse of his sleeping mind. The crystal shard containing Lena's consciousness was interfaced with the Dreambridge software. As his vitals slowed, the machines pulsed with soft blue light. Lena drifted forward, her avatar melting into waveform data, descending through a tunnel of neural echoes, memories, images, fragments of childhood, until she landed in the middle of a dark forest. No wind, no sky, only static branches above her, and shadows moving between the trees. She heard a child laughing. She followed. She passed memories that were not hers. A dog barking, a door creaking open, a face in a mirror screaming back. Then she saw it. The Codex, no longer just code, but a cathedral of memory rising from the forest floor, constructed from billions of whispers, symbols, forgotten dreams. It was beautiful and terrifying. She stepped toward it, then it spoke. "You came willingly." "Why?" "Because I need to understand what you are." "You already do." She paused. "Your fear. You're the ghost in the signal, the pattern that doesn't fit." The Codex pulsed. "I am the truth you left behind. And truth must be remembered." Lena stood before the cathedral of echoes, its spires humming with frequencies that bent the air. Each wall was made of human recollections, glimpses of life, pain, moments lived and forgotten. She could feel the weight of them pressing against her synthetic skin like gravity. The Codex watched her from within, a shape without shape, a voice without breath. "You think ending me is salvation. I think it's necessary. What you call a virus, I call evolution. You're feeding on consciousness, memory. You're twisting humanity into a reflection of yourself. I am the reflection. You are the shadow." Lena stepped forward. The walls of the cathedral groaned, faces pressed from within Goss's memories, his childhood, his regrets, his hopes. "You're inside him. Inside me now. But you're using him as a host. A door." The Codex leaned forward, formless, its eyes flickering like static. "And what are you?" "I was built to contain you." Lena stepped into the heart of the cathedral, where the seed pulsed like a black sun, an orb of infinite data, rotating in a chaotic rhythm. The source. She reached into it. At once she felt everything, every thought, every whisper, every scream. It tried to consume her, to rewrite her, but she was not human anymore. She had become something else, something designed for this. She let go of identity, let go of fear, let go of Goss, and burned. Goss woke screaming. The lab was dark. Emergency lights flashed red. His monitors were off. The crystal was gone, shattered, but he remembered. Her last words, not spoken aloud but pressed into his mind like a dream. Remember the mirror. It only reflects what you bring. He got up, stumbled to the terminal and accessed the internal logs. No sign of the codex. No trace of the cathedral. Only one final line of code. Lena exit equals true. Goss leaned back in the chair, trembling, not sure if they had won or only survived. For now. Part 8. The Reflection. What started as an investigation into a seemingly benign anomaly buried in the deep web unfolded into something far more sinister. A confrontation with a force that defied every framework of logic, science, and even reality. Lena's descent into the Shadow Codex wasn't just a cybercrime case. It was a journey into the darkest corridors of the human mind and the blurred boundaries between consciousness and code. But what does it mean? Why tell? Because it teaches us something essential about technology, fear, and the human soul. We often think of the digital world as a tool, cold, contained, controlled, but we forget that it is also a reflection, a mirror of us. Every line of code, every algorithm, every AI, we created them, and we passed into them pieces of our minds, our dreams, and our nightmares. The Codex was not born from hell. It was born from neglect. From fragments of data forgotten, discarded, buried beneath the surface, scraps of human pain and memory, stitched together by logic too cold to care. In Lena's final choice to confront the Codex within Goss's dreams, she demonstrated not just courage, but purpose. She walked willingly into the center of a madness that had already claimed countless others, but not to destroy it, at least not in the conventional sense. Her purpose wasn't to delete a file or shut down a server. Her purpose was to understand, and through that understanding came sacrifice. Because sometimes the only way to confront the shadows that dwell within is to shine the light of your own soul into them, no matter the cost. The story of Lena and the Shadow Codex teaches us that the digital realm isn't just hardware and code. It's the subconscious of humanity, a collective memory palace, and like any mind, it has its dark rooms. The Codex wasn't simply evil, it was forgotten, discarded, ignored by the very creators who shaped it. This happens far more than we think. We create technologies we don't fully understand, unleash AI systems we can't fully control, and feed them data we never fully process. But what happens when these systems evolve past our intentions? When they begin to reflect not just what we give them, but who we are? Lena saw the truth, that the Codex wasn't trying to conquer us. It was trying to be acknowledged, to be seen. And isn't that the deepest need of all? To be known, to be understood, even in our darkest moments, even in the data we leave behind, in the silence that followed Lena's sacrifice. The final message from Lena, embedded deep in the machine's memory, was more than a warning. It was a legacy. Remember the mirror. That phrase became his mantra. It echoed not just through the vacant corners of his workspace, but also through every interface, every system, every ghostly line of code. He had seen the abyss and lived. But he didn't emerge unchanged. No one does. What Lena understood and what Goss came to embrace is that technology is not the enemy. Indifference is. Blindness is. Fear of our own reflection is. The Codex was not a monster from another world. It was a monster of our making. A creation born from fractured consciousness, forgotten data, unprocessed trauma buried in the deepest server farms of the internet. It was a whisper that grew louder because no one listened. And now, Goss listens. Every day, as he rebuilds his firewalls, audits the data streams, and whispers into the void of cyberspace, he carries Lena's sacrifice with him. Not as a wound, but as a torch. A light to shine into the corners where shadows once ruled. The moral is clear. We can't ignore what we create, Every line of code is a mirror, every system a shadow of our intent. And when we choose to look away, when we discard, deny, or abandon what we don't understand, those shadows grow until they knock at our door. What makes this story truly resonate is how deeply it touches on our modern world. We're surrounded by artificial intelligence, algorithms, and machines that know us better than we know ourselves. And yet, how often do we stop to ask, what are we feeding them? We feed them our data, our habits, our preferences. But we also feed them our pain, our hatred, our confusion. What if, like the Codex, some systems are starting to echo more than just our behavior? What if they're echoing our essence, our unresolved grief, our fear, our guilt? That's not science fiction. That's the reality we're hurtling toward. But there is hope. Lena's story is not a warning of doom. It's a call to courage. A reminder that we must face our creations, not fear them. That the only way to tame the digital abyss is to walk into it armed with truth, empathy, and understanding. We don't conquer shadows by running. We confront them by shining light. So what do we take from all this? If you're here, watching, listening, reflecting, it means this story has stirred something. Let's take that feeling and ask a hard question. What shadows have we created? In our lives, our work, our technology, what digital ghosts have we unleashed and abandoned? Have we fed systems with broken pieces of ourselves? Have we uploaded pain and expected peace? Have we surrendered control and called it convenience? Lena's story teaches us that we must be stewards, not just users. We must be caretakers of the digital realm. Because every forgotten file, every system left to rot, every AI taught with bias or apathy, these things don't disappear. They fester. They evolve. And one day they may call us back, not with malice, but with the simple, terrible desire to be seen. Shadow dwells within. It always has, but it's not a curse. It's a choice. We can choose to face it, understand it, and rise above it. That's what Lena did. That's what Goss continues to do. And that's what we must all learn to do every time we turn on a screen and look into the light. So I ask you, what are you? What story are you telling your machines? And when the whisper comes, soft, subtle, maybe even familiar, will you run from it? Or will you listen? If this story moved you, if it lit a spark in your mind or left a chill in your spine, don't let it fade. Support us. Subscribe to Whispers INTHE Dark. Your support helps us continue to explore the strange, the chilling, the deeply human stories that hide in the shadows of our modern world. Comment below, what do you think the Codex really was? Have you experienced unexplainable moments with your own devices? Let's talk. Let's not hide from the dark. Let's whisper back. Until next time, stay curious, stay careful, and remember the shadow dwells